Welcome to NarrativeNook audio tales where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening. The old middle school building was renovated into an elderly activity center after the school moved elsewhere. Nearby elderly would often spend time there. Many retired teachers were still living in the dorm building within the school grounds. As the three of them couldn't drive their cars inside, they reached the dorm building on foot. It was a decrepit building. On each of the 5 floors, there were a series of rooms resembling classrooms. Judging from the clothes hanging in front of the doors, it was evident not many teachers lived there anymore. Electra made a call before a middle-aged woman welcomed them inside. She was Jennifer Valentine, the daughter of the old principal, Nicholas Valentine. "Greetings. My father had just woken up, so feel free to talk with him." There were tear marks on her countenance. Clearly, she had been crying. Lucian and Roxanne followed Electra into the room before he asked, "What did the hospital say about Mr. Valentine's condition? He should have a medical record, right?" "Thank you for visiting my father, Mr. Farwell. However, my father, they say he has no hope for recovery." A sorrowful expression was set on Jennifer's countenance again. Lucian's and Electra's expressions turned grim when they saw how thin and feeble Nicholas, who was lying on a bed, had become. Even Roxanne couldn't help but sigh in her mind when she saw the old man's condition. What people are most often afraid of when they've grown old is that they'll be riddled with ailments, drain their family fortune, leaving none for their descendants, and pass away agonizingly in an unsightly manner. In the past, I bet his eyes were filled with light as he dedicated his life to education. Now, however, his eyes have turned cloudy. Lucian and Electra had to announce their presence loudly, fearing Nicholas wouldn't hear them. Eventually, Lucian introduced Roxanne to Nicholas. This is my wife, Mr. Valentine. She's a doctor, and she's here today to examine you." Upon hearing that, Nicholas smiled rather emotionally. In response, Jennifer shed her sorrowful expression away and grabbed her father's hand excitedly. "Dad, let Dr. Jarvis examine you. Also, Ms. Lane and Mr. Farwell are willing to pay for your treatment. You don't need to worry about spending money anymore."
No. I don't need it. I'm fine. Ivy accepted my end.
"I have students all over the world. I'm not afraid of death. I'm not." Each intermittent word that left Nicholas' mouth was uttered firmly. Meanwhile, Jennifer presented her father's medical records to Roxanne. There wasn't enough light in the room, so Roxanne went outside to read it. Lucian asked Jennifer to follow his wife and explain the situation in detail. As Nicholas spoke long-windedly, he asked how Lucian and Electra had been doing. He also kept praising Lucian because the latter made numerous donations to the school in the past. In fact, Farwell Group was the one who financed the construction of the new campus. As Lucian patiently listened to Nicholas' words, he felt remorseful. "I've not been doing enough over the years. I can't believe I didn't visit you once." It's fine if you're too busy to visit, considering how big your family is and how many businesses it has. However, know this. Your family has significantly contributed to our city's economy, so don't feel bad." Silently, Lucian nodded. Outside, after Roxanne finished listening to Jennifer's explanation of Nicholas' condition, she read through his medical records. "His condition does require a massive amount of money to be kept in check. I think I can try using the acupuncture technique I've been learning in conjunction with my own medicine." Initially, Jennifer didn't have much hope, but when she saw the solemn expression on Roxanne's face, she quickly served the latter a cup of coffee. Roxanne accepted the coffee, took a sip, and continued to read the record as she spoke. "The first thing we'll do is move your father to our hospital. You don't need to worry about the fee. It's all free. You just need to tend to his daily needs. The treatment will take around a month." Her words astonished Jennifer. Free treatment? She couldn't help but tremble emotionally because her father's treatment fee had nearly emptied her account,
even though she still had a family to care for and her child was studying at a university. Do you mean it, Ms. Jarvis? Asked Jennifer, fearing that Roxanne was only joking. Nodding, Roxanne turned to her and explained, he'll need an operation. I can't guarantee how much longer he'll live, but based on my experience, I can raise his 5-year survival rate to 85%. Jennifer was stunned before asking with elation, do you mean he can live 5 more years? You can say that. Instantly, Jennifer sobbed. Truly? Thank you, Ms. Jarvis. You're my savior. My son knows his grandfather is sick, so he can't focus on his studies. Finally, I can tell him some good news. In response, Roxanne comforted her. Some time later, Lucian and Electra left the room. After seeing the crying Jennifer and listening to Roxanne's encouragement, Lucian realized what was happening. Mr. Valentine is asleep. We didn't prepare much, but I heard you have a child studying at university and another in high school. Is that right? When Electra learned Roxanne could treat Nicholas, she was happy for his family. Of course, she also felt envious of Roxanne's capabilities. Jennifer nodded. I bet your family's fortune is nearly spent due to Mr. Valentine's ailment. In that case, I'll provide you with 1 million so your children can finish their education without worry. If that's not enough, just let me know, offered Lucian. Electra added, I don't have much cash on hand right now, only around 300,000 to 400,000, but I'll give them to you. They promised to give Jennifer money so she wouldn't need to worry about anything. That baffled Jennifer so much that she was at a loss for words for a long while. Out of nowhere, she wailed and attempted to kneel. However, Roxanne moved fast enough to prevent the middle-aged woman from doing so. Lucian also stepped forward to prevent that from happening. Please don't be like that. Mr. Valentine dedicated his life to the education of the youth, so much so that he fell ill. It's our wish to repay his contribution and see him well. We'll also ask our fellow students to donate to your family. Yeah. Mr. Valentine lived a simple life. He isn't a greedy man, so there's no way we'll let him be trapped by monetary issues, rejoined Electra. Their words successfully eliminated all of Jennifer's concerns. I'll contact Madeline to send a vehicle here to pick Mr. Valentine up, Lucian. Roxanne's thoughts remained on Nicholas' condition. Without delay, she called Madeline, who swiftly sent an ambulance to her location. After everything was wrapped up, the group bade Jennifer goodbye. As Jennifer watched them leave, she couldn't help but tear up again. Lucian offered, let's share a meal, Electra. If you hadn't paid attention to Mr. Valentine, I wouldn't have known he was in this state. If we didn't meet him in time, he might have been beyond saving. However, Electra declined. Hence, he left the school with Roxanne. On their way back, Roxanne received a call from Madeline notifying her that Nicholas was in the process of being transferred to the hospital. You're doing a pretty good job as a hospital director, Roxanne teased. That spurred Madeline to grumble. Can you stop hitting me when I'm down? I thought being a director just meant having meetings with everyone constantly. It turns out a director has a lot more responsibilities than I thought. My gosh, do you know what time I can only get off work now? Also, initially, I was looking forward to the mansion you gifted me. However, I'm so busy now that I don't even know if my water and electricity have been cut off or not. In response, Roxanne comforted her friend by mentioning the high salary and the opportunity to meet more outstanding doctors. To her surprise, Madeline asked, what about Jonathan? What has he been doing lately? He seems busy. Do you think he's going to wear himself out? Should I arrange a checkup for him at the hospital? Roxanne was stunned for a moment before understanding what was happening. Even though Jonathan's a blockhead, Madeline's still enamored with him. So, she agreed to help out. That sounds like a good plan. I'll ask Lucian to order him to attend a checkup at the hospital to experience your tenderness. Madeline sneered. Sure. I'll be certain to let him have a taste of my tenderness. This time, it'll be my turn to prepare him a vomit bag." Upon hearing that, Roxanne felt a slight chill run down her spine. I wonder what punishment she'll inflict on Jonathan. When Lucian saw Roxanne giggling after ending the call, he asked her why she was laughing. Hence, she told him about Madeline's plan, eliciting a loud chuckle from him. It seems like there's no escape for Jonathan. Yeah. Although, I think the Queen family may be in havoc right now. Who could have thought Frida would oppose her family? Roxanne's worry was accurate. Concurrently, in the Queen residence, Frida was packing her things. Her parents tried to convince her to stay and asked Jonathan to do the same. However, Jonathan scowled. "I don't mind her, Mom, Dad. She's out of her mind, considering she can't even tell she's being used by Sean. Just think about how much loss she caused our family this time. Does she really think Sean will hand those businesses to her?" Yeah, you're right. You're always right. The Queen family just has to rely on you. You're inhumane, do you know that? I can't believe you're even willing to steal your own sister's business. Frida barked furiously. While I raised the price to make more money, I also did it for the good of the Queen family. Yet he snatched those companies back from me for Lucian and Roxanne. Thank goodness Sean didn't blame me too much. Otherwise, I don't know how to face him. In any case, I'm definitely leaving the family since they won't help me, unlike Sean. He will win, and Jonathan will cry when that time comes. Jonathan will never achieve greatness by being Farwell Group's dog. Frida left the Queen residence without a second glance after packing up her belongings. Their parents thought of persuading Jonathan to forgive his sister, but Jonathan solemnly retorted, "I'm not the one who drove her away today. She knew she was guilty, and that was why she chose to leave. Also, please stop spoiling her. If not for Lucian's dismissal, our entire Queen family would have been ruined by her." Right as those words left his lips, a wave of frustration washed over him, and he stood up to leave. The car window was wound down as he drove, and he let the cold wind lash against his face. Jonathan felt the sudden urge for some alcohol, but there was no one suitable to have a drink with. Lucian would not reject his invitation, but he did not want to interrupt Lucian spending time with his family. Caden would be a good choice if not for his recently busy schedule. After a while of contemplation, Jonathan realized he did not have many friends. He had been too serious in recent years. Every decision he made in recent years was preceded by careful deliberation in order to develop the Queen family enough to catch up with Farwell Group. Sure enough, the Queen family was now powerful. He did not limit them to only the medicinal herbs. Business. He also ventured into other fields with Lucian. Lucian never once left him behind, as he would always give Jonathan a chance for investment. Those were things his younger sister did not understand. After stopping the car on a bridge, he got out of it to look at the surface of the river a distance away. As the cold breeze wrapped around him, he slowly calmed down. Jonathan was good at recomposing himself, after all. Right as he was about to turn around, he noticed a new car crashing into the back of his car. A loud bang ensued. Then, a woman's scream of terror came. Jonathan checked the back of his Mercedes-Benz and realized it had not suffered much damage. However, the woman seemed to have been frightened out of her mind as she continued screaming for a while. Jonathan quietly watched her from the side and waited until the woman got out of her car and walked over to him with an apologetic look. He noticed that she had a slender figure, and her face was lightly adorned with makeup. Based on her appearance, he assumed that she worked in an office. Once she walked over, she studied the collision point. Jonathan's car seemed to have come out of it mostly unscathed, but hers was not as lucky. The bumper was crushed. I'm so sorry, mister. I really am. I've only started driving recently, and I just bought my car, so I'm not that experienced behind the wheel. I saw your car parked there, and I wanted to turn, but there were other cars at the side. I was panicking, so I... When she lifted her head to take a glimpse of Jonathan's face, she froze. He's so handsome. He has attractive features and a defined profile. Moreover, his slightly gloomy eyes are sure to catch any woman's attention. Suddenly, she was glad that she had crashed into someone's car, for it let her bump into a handsome man. Promptly, she introduced herself. Mister, I'm Coralie Crawford. Let's make a police report and settle this properly. I'll definitely pay for the damage done. Jonathan swiftly waved his hands dismissively.
It's fine.
We don't need to get the cops involved over a trivial accident like this. You're at fault for driving into my car, but I shouldn't have parked here either. Let's just bear the costs for the damages to our own cars. With that, he studied Coralie to make sure that she was fine. Then, he turned, about to leave. Coralie's heart skipped a beat. She did not want to let an interesting encounter like this slip by her. Mister, what about this? To avoid any future misunderstandings, let's exchange numbers. I'm scared that you might go back on your word, Coralie said, her excuse a reasonable one. Jonathan knitted his brows. Miss, I said that I shouldn't have parked there, but you were the one who crashed into my car. You're at fault, too, so there's no way we'll have any future misunderstandings. I have something to attend to, so please excuse me now. With that said, Jonathan got into his car and sped off. Coralie was still for a few seconds before curling her lips.
Ja, Mr. Iosman.
You won't be able to get rid of me that easily, though. I've memorized your plate number. A while later, Jonathan reached the Farwell residence. Jonathan had come in a hurry, thinking that something urgent had happened. However, Lucian was calmly drinking tea in the living room. He even invited Jonathan to join him. After a brief chat about the supply of medicinal herbs, Lucian started inquiring about Jonathan's health. I'm in good health. Also, we're in the line of supplying medicinal herbs, so we're more attentive to our health. What's on your mind, Lucian? Jonathan curiously asked. It was obvious that Lucian's interest was piqued. I'm not saying that there's anything issue with your health, but you've been slaving away for the family business. Don't you think you should do a proper checkup? Jonathan nodded in agreement. In that case, I'll do one. Good. I've already made an appointment for you. You'll be doing the checkup in Roxanne's hospital, okay? Lucian was worried that Jonathan might detect something amiss, but evidently, his worries were for naught. The dense Jonathan nodded again. Is tomorrow fine? I'll head there in the morning. Lucian bobbed his head, but at the same time, he began wondering how Madeline was going to deal with the dense man. By the way, Lucian, I've noticed some issues popping up with our overseas client. There is a rise in client complaints, and some are even trying to ask for lower prices. I'll be looking into this for more details. Jonathan was a workaholic, and he always talked about work. Lucian bobbed his head as the look in his eyes changed. You don't need to do that.
It's schon.
He's trying to take our clients away from us. Let's not alert him to our realization and let him dwell in his glee for now. We have more than enough clients to keep our business afloat. Since these people aren't interested in being the best in the market, let's replace them all. We'll wait until they break the contract first. Jonathan nodded, even more impressed by Lucian. He was still not as focused and sensitive to changes as Lucian. The latter had already identified the underlying issue when Jonathan just became aware of the problem. Lucian had even formulated a plan to address it. Maybe this is what a strategist is. The two continued chatting for a while longer. Jonathan still felt guilty about his sister's betrayal, but Lucian was unfazed. When Roxanne came down the stairs after tucking the children in, Jonathan rose to his feet and excused himself from the house. How was it? Did he say yes? She asked. An amused smile manifested on Lucian's lips. He'll be going for the checkup tomorrow. I just think it'll be really interesting if the two of them end up being in a relationship. Yes, I'd like to see that too. It'll be much better than mine. It won't be bittersweet. Roxanne sighed before shooting Lucian a glare. Lucian shuddered. He was all ready to start eating popcorn and watch the show unfold, but it seemed like he had accidentally shot himself in the foot instead. Thus, he quickly dropped the smile and replaced it with a solemn look. Pulling Roxanne closer to him, he then said, of course, of course. You're right. I didn't do good by you, so what? Just as Roxanne frowned, she saw Lucian going down on one knee. She froze. Then, Lucian fished out a black velvet box from his pocket and slowly opened it. His gaze on her was as if she was the only one who mattered to him. Roxanne was stunned, and her heart began to race. Roxanne Jarvis, Miss Jarvis, will you please marry me again? I failed you all these years. I was the reason you didn't experience a loving romance and the bliss of marriage. You were forced to grow up and become the mature individual I wasn't expecting you to be. For the children, you've gone through enough pain. For me, you've waited for so many years. I'm at fault for being so slow to realize these all. Maybe there'll be this wall in your heart forever. You might be wondering if I've chosen to be with you for the children's sake, but I'm going to tell you that's not the case. There are so many brilliant points about you that I'm attracted to. You're the most suitable partner I've ever met.
I love you, Roxanne Jarvis.
So, please marry me again. Lucian's heartfelt confession, solemn expression, and sincere gaze melted Roxanne's heart. She couldn't help but tremble at that moment. Tears flowed out of her eyes uncontrollably. She thought she would be returning to Lucian's side without an announcement of any sort. Even though there was a hole of regret in her heart, she told herself to ignore it and just enjoy the love Lucian was going to shower her with. She told herself that was enough. But the countless nights she spent lying on the man's arm, staring at his sleeping face, made her yearn for more, for a formal ceremony. She did not want to live through her days in a daze anymore. She now had what she had longed for right in front of her. Even though it was a little plain, and even though there was no one around to witness the scene, it was enough for her. With a smile on her face, she inclined her head and stretched out her arm, lifting her ring finger slightly. Lucian returned the smile. Roxanne could almost see a younger version of him with a new toy, beaming in the same way as he was at that moment. At the same time, she could also almost see the delight of a teenage version of Lucian after having solved a difficult mathematical question. For a split second, she could also imagine that smile on an adult Lucian's face as he managed a corporate empire. Lucian slid the ring into Roxanne's ring finger before placing a kiss on it. Stand up quickly. Your reputation will be ruined if someone sees you like this. A sweet smile grew on Roxanne's lips as she looked at the ring on her finger. Lucian slowly rose to his feet before wrapping his arms around her. Simultaneously, he lowered his head to press a long kiss on her forehead. Right then, the lights in the living room went out. Thinking that it was a power outage, Roxanne scanned her surroundings before turning back to Lucian, about to ask him why the backup generator was not kicking in. However, in the next second, the ceiling of the living room turned into a sea of stars. Then, multiple figures appeared. Congratulations, Roxanne. You've finally married Mr. Farwell. The first person to appear was Madeline, who passed a bouquet of fresh roses to Lucian. Lucian then handed the bouquet to Roxanne. Right after that, Madeline hugged her good friend tightly. Madeline's tears were rolling down her face, and she whispered to Roxanne, I'm finally seeing you happy. The tears Roxanne had finally managed to stop flowed again. Then, popping sounds echoed in the room, and confetti flew everywhere. As it turned out, the children had not slept. They were all smiling at their parents as they ran over to them. Daddy, Mommy's finally saying yes to you. Mommy, are you happy? Mommy, we lied to you. We weren't sleeping yet. Daddy asked us to prepare this, so don't be mad at us. How could Roxanne possibly be mad at them? She hunched over and cheerfully gave kisses to the children. Right then, Sonia and Elias walked over. The two of them were dressed rather formally. Elias was in a suit, and Sonia was in a gown. Roxanne, This is what the Farwell family owes you. Lucian should be proposing to you, and we must do all the proper procedures. We're delighted that you're saying yes to Lucian." Elias was beaming. "We can't wrong a wonderful daughter-in-law like her anymore." There was a tinge of awkwardness in Sonia's expression, but she still walked over to Roxanne and cast an apologetic look. Roxanne, I'm sorry for what happened in the past. I've made a terrible mistake. I hope you'll forgive me for those transgressions and give me a chance to compensate for them. I'm truly happy right now. It's my pleasure for you to marry Lucian." Roxanne was so caught up in the moment of bliss she could not find it in herself to be angry at Sonia. Meanwhile, Lucian nodded at his father's request. There's no way we're skipping the wedding photos, wedding, and honeymoon." Madeline promptly intervened and chastised, "Of course. The Farwell family have plenty of money, so you have to give Roxanne the best, got it?" Lucian nodded obediently. The sudden proposal made Roxanne feel secure. The activities that night made Roxanne fall into a deep sleep afterward. In her dream, she was pregnant again. She could not see the appearance of the fourth baby clearly, but the childlike voice was saying, Mommy, hurry up. I want to play with my siblings." Unlike Roxanne, Frida was having a horrible night. After packing her luggage to head to Sean's mansion, she started waiting for Sean. However, no matter how long she waited for him, he never showed up. The falling out with her brother and the conflict with her parents was driving her to a mental breakdown. So, she ran to a bar and got herself drunk while waiting for Sean to call her. Alas, her phone never rang. Not even her parents bothered calling her. All she could think of was how ruthless her brother was. Stumbling out of the taxi, Frida belatedly realized she had nowhere to go. Hence, she could only hail a cab to return to Sean's mansion. Yet, before she could enter the house, she saw Sean's car driving over. But there was another person in the front passenger seat. Even though her vision was blurry from the alcohol, she could make out that the passenger was a young woman with an impressive figure. The last thread of sanity in her mind broke, and she fixed her gaze on the other woman. The weather was cold, and Sean took off his jacket to drape it on the other woman's shoulder the second they came out of the car. The smile on his face and the loving gaze in his eyes drove Frida mad. Frida could not stand it anymore. This was the man she had been waiting forever and a day for. She could forgive Sean for going after Aubrey. She could pretend that he did it to take revenge on Lucian. But now, Frida realized she was the dumbest woman in the world. She had willingly become his puppet, she had willingly sacrificed herself, and she had voluntarily cut ties with her family for his plan. Then, Frida hastily walked over to them. The alcoholic haze was gone, giving way to anger. Before Sean could register her presence, Frida slapped the other woman hard. In the next instance, she glared at Sean viciously and bellowed, How could you do this to me, Sean? You ingrate." Tears cascaded uncontrollably down her face, for the world was crumbling down around her. Raising her hand, she wanted to slap the man as well. Frida's hand was tightly gripped. Sean's eyes were burning with fury as he berated, Frida, what are you doing? Batch. Scoundrels. Frida was unfazed and hurled more profanities in the young woman's direction, fervently wishing she could strangle the latter. A loud and crisp slap echoed in the air. Sean had just slapped Frida hard across her face. "What's gotten to you? She's my sister," Sean gritted through his teeth. Then, he cast a glance at his sister, Coralie. Coralie covered her face in pain. She had never been slapped in her entire life. Tears streamed down her face following the searing pain as she cast a bewildered look at the drunken Frida. "Sean, is this your girlfriend?" Contempt festered in Coralie's eyes. Frida was stumped, both by the slap and Sean's words. She sobered up instantly and froze on the ground, unable to utter a word. Sean led Coralie into the mansion to coax her, as well as apply some medicinal ointment to her injured face. "That young woman is his sister?" Well, upon a closer look, they do look alike. Frida suddenly felt her body going weak as she slumped to the floor. Sean, what is with the luggage? Was that your girlfriend? She sure is a friendly one, greeting me with a slap. If Mom and Dad know about this, she won't ever get to marry you.
Coralie groaned.
Sean had only arranged for Coralie to come to Horrington to follow up on the upcoming expansion projects. If Coralie hadn't encountered the handsome man on the bridge that night, she would have been in a much fouler mood. Okay, I will make her apologize to you sincerely. She didn't know you were my sister and thought I was with another girl. It's only normal for girlfriends to be jealous under the circumstance, right? Sean placated. In the end, Coralie just uttered the number of a license plate. Sean, hurry up and investigate this car license plate for me and I won't get mad at you, but I'm still going to be mad at your girlfriend. Sean immediately agreed to her request. Investigating a car plate was a piece of cake to him. This is the car that bumped into yours, right? Was it a hit and run? You could have reported it to the police right away. Then again, we can also choose to resolve it ourselves, Sean said. He had noticed that Coralie's bumper was broken when he picked her up just now and assumed that she must be looking for the car owner who bumped into her car. No, that's not it. You've misunderstood the situation, jumping to conclusions like your girlfriend. Just find out about the identity of the owner of the license plate. You don't need to worry about the rest. I was the one who bumped into his car, and I want to compensate him. Coralie explained. She was at a loss for words. Not only did she get slapped for no reason, but if her brother continued to misunderstand the situation, she might miss her chance with her crush. Seeing as his sister had finally calmed down, Sean headed out of the mansion and noticed Frida, who was sobbing uncontrollably in the courtyard. He made his way over, and Frida slowly lifted her head. You drank yourself into oblivion and came over to slap both my sister and me, but only suffered one slap in return. That doesn't seem fair, Sean said icily with a grim expression.
I'm sorry.
It's all my fault. I'm really, really sorry. I was too reckless. Please forgive me, Frida pleaded as she carefully gauged the man's expression. In the end, Sean shook his head lightly and offered his hand to help her up. In the morning, Roxanne woke up extra early. She wanted to carry out the operation on the headmaster earlier. Usually, the blood pressure of patients would be lower in the morning. Coincidentally, the headmaster's surgery had to be done when the blood pressure was at a lower level. Otherwise, the risk would be higher. Lucien was still fast asleep and instinctively rolled over to hug Roxanne. She carefully wriggled herself out of his embrace. After she was done washing up, Roxanne went downstairs and was greeted by the sight of bouquets of flowers and roses on the table. Then, she glanced at the ring on her ring finger and smiled, finally feeling at peace with her life. After getting married, her life was blissfully uneventful. Madeline soon arrived to pick Roxanne up. The two of them were going to work together during the surgery. Roxanne urged Madeline to have breakfast. Over breakfast, Madeline told Roxanne that after having a mansion to herself, she had decided to get a kitchen helper as well. Hence, she was finally able to eat on time now. After they were done with breakfast, the two of them discussed the patient's medical condition on their way to the hospital. It was a rather complicated surgery that lasted from 7 until 9:30 in the morning. Both Madeline and Roxanne were fully focused on fighting the battle. In the end, they managed to deliver good news to the headmaster's daughter after getting out of the operating room. Thank you so much, Dr. Jarvis and Dr. Zander. I really don't know how to thank you both. The headmaster's daughter was about to kneel before Roxanne and Madeline to thank them, but she was stopped by Roxanne in time. After giving some care advice to the headmaster's daughter, Roxanne bade goodbye to Madeline and headed to the research institute. She bumped right into Jonathan downstairs. Hi, Roxanne. I'm here for a health checkup, Jonathan said cheerily. He was confounded by the hint of a sinister smile in Roxanne's eyes. At the registration counter, Jonathan was briefed on his health checkup details after he made his payment. He had selected a rather basic plan, covering a CT scan or ultrasound for his heart, liver, lungs, and kidneys, an electrocardiogram for his heart, and a full blood report. However, Madeline had already reminded the reception staff to add some health check parameters for Jonathan beforehand. Ads by PubFuture. Mr. Queen, based on your current lifestyle of being sedentary and having an irregular diet, we would highly recommend that you include 2 additional health check parameters, which are gastroscopy and colonoscopy. These procedures only need to be done once and will ensure your health for years to come, the receptionist advised. Jonathan heartily accepted the suggestion. Meanwhile, the corner of Madeline's lips curled into a smile as she looked at the list of Jonathan's health check tests in front of the computer. I'll do the gastroscopy. As for the colonoscopy, well, that's too private. I'll ask someone else to arrange a procedure that is less painful. Madeline then changed into her work attire and wore a white coat, hair cap, and a mask. She was certain nobody would be able to recognize her. Since Jonathan hadn't eaten anything, he proceeded with the gastroscopy first. She hurriedly arrived at the gastroscopy room and dismissed the doctor on duty. Jonathan's first experience with gastroscopy was excruciating. He vomited many times and threw up a puddle of acidic liquid. Madeline asked her assistant to comfort Jonathan when she noticed his discomfort. However, she continued with the gastroscopy, and her expression turned grim. Madeline realized that Jonathan actually had serious gastritis. What's the matter with him? I've never heard him mention this. Madeline's face turned impassive. After she was done with the checkup, she no longer felt the urge to tease Jonathan. Instead, she hurriedly checked out the gastroscopy scans. Why does he have such serious gastritis? If his condition continues to worsen, it could become stomach cancer. What's the matter with him? Why didn't he take good care of himself? Then, she immediately asked the gastroenterologist to take a closer look at Jonathan. Roxanne had just arrived at the research institute and was about to change into her lab coat when Madeline called her. Roxanne, Jonathan has a serious case of gastritis. The situation is a bit complicated, with multiple polyps and some erosion. I was careless earlier and forgot to take some tissue samples for testing. Madeline's tone was full of concern. Don't worry, Madeline. Send the images to my phone, and I'll take a look. Besides, you're worrying too much. It might not be as serious as you think. I have other ways to treat this as well. What are you afraid of? As Roxanne spoke, Madeline quickly hung up the phone and sent over the test images. Roxanne looked at them for a long time, and Jonathan's condition was indeed very serious. She couldn't help but sigh in her heart. Jonathan was really pushing himself too hard. This might be caused by a combination of irregular eating habits and alcohol drinking. But fortunately, in Roxanne's opinion, this was entirely treatable. She would use modern medicine to kill the bacteria and then use her own blend of traditional medicine to restore balance. As long as Jonathan followed her medical advice strictly, he could probably recover in 3 months. So Roxanne replied to Madeline and asked her to relax and not worry too much. In the office, when Madeline heard that Jonathan could fully recover, she felt slightly relieved in her heart. Jonathan, who was still undergoing the medical examination, appeared unaffected and completed all the tests. Madeline looked at the other examination results, and everything was normal, including the colonoscopy. The only problem was only the condition of his stomach that was too severe. She immediately instructed the staff at the medical examination department to ask Jonathan to stay. Mr. Queen, the director would like to see you. Jonathan didn't realize it at first, but when he saw Madeline, he remembered. Ms. Zander, I forgot that you were promoted to the position of director. But I can tell that you're doing a great job managing things around here. I experienced the whole medical examination process today, and it was really impressive. Jonathan thought it was always a good idea to start with a compliment. Madeline's face didn't look good, but she still asked him to take a seat. However, I have a small suggestion. The doctor in your gastroscopy department seems to be a bit rough. You might want to advise her about it. Jonathan couldn't understand why Madeline's face suddenly became serious. Maybe being a director means she has to put on a serious face? With the intention of providing constructive feedback to improve the hospital's level of care, he spoke about his slightly unpleasant experience during the medical examination. Madeline was taken aback. She never expected him to complain about her. How dare this guy complain about me? She took out his examination report and asked mildly, Mr. Queen, may I ask some specific questions? Does your family have a history of gastric disease? Jonathan shook his head. When he realized that she did not pay any attention to what he said, he wondered if she was the sort of person who did not care about other people's advice. Okay. In your diet, do you eat foods with a high concentration of bacteria, or have you come into contact with some radioactive substances? Madeline continued to inquire, while still keeping a stern expression. Jonathan shook his head again as he finally realized that there might be a problem with his gastroscopy results. So he asked, Miss Xander, is there something wrong with my stomach? Yes. It's a serious problem. You really don't take care of your health, do you? If you delay any longer, it might develop into stomach cancer. Do you understand? Madeline's tone suddenly scared Jonathan. Is it really that serious?
Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.